Welcome to Unshielded, the podcast where we explore the cutting edge of blockchain and data protection technologies and the quest for a more equitable and accessible internet. Today, we have a truly special guest joining us. Eran Barak, the CEO of Midnight, is here to share his insights on building a cutting edge data protection blockchain and its potential to revolutionize the way decentralized apps are built. We'll explore the mission behind Midnight, the power of zero-knowledge proofs, and real-world use cases like transforming KYC. Plus, we'll discuss what it means to be the CEO for a blockchain company. Eran, welcome to Unshielded. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Very excited to hear what you have to say. And Eran, you have an impressive background in scaling businesses and driving innovation, particularly when it involves highly sensitive data. What was it that initially drew you to blockchain and Midnight specifically?
Great question, Anthony. I think the internet has gone through several eras, right? Through the consumption stage with static web pages, interactive, then with authorship. But we've gotten to a place where everything is very centralized with just a handful of companies, and they control the content, they control the experience, they somewhat shape our reality. Some people may be glad with that trade-off, and that's the perfect choice, but the technology is really moving fast into new frontiers. I even saw a video where people were able to record brainwaves and have AI translate that into a text that can be data mined. So I think that we need to start thinking about some alternatives to be ready for what's coming next out of technology. And I want to use for you a kind of a simple, tangible example. I was reminded about the movie Minority Report. You'll find out that I'm somewhat of a movie buff, but it talks about kind of a scenario out in 2050 where the protagonist, played by Tom Cruise, is haunted by the authorities because they research his psych profile markers and believe that he will commit a crime. How does this pertain to our new world, right? We're going to see DNA digitized as part of standard healthcare in the upcoming years. This is going to be good for diagnostics. But if AI is going to data mine our DNA, we're going to kind of making Minority Report technically possible before 2030. So I don't know if everybody is comfortable with, the government or some institution having custody of their DNA. People may want to have control or a say about who has access to this and how it can be used. And this is where I think blockchain comes in, because blockchain enables this new era of the internet, the era of decentralization. A blockchain is kind of a mix of a database and processing engine kind of all meshed into one, and it's shared across many participants. But what it allows is for whether you're an individual or a business to have ownership over that data, and instead having complete control for yourself rather than bestowing it on a central player. I think that can really create a new economy and a fairer society.
So some really important considerations on data and the fact that technology is going to accelerate some of the challenges that are coming in the next few years. Eran, could you elaborate a little bit on the mission of Midnight and why data protection is such a fundamental need?
I was a big fan of Bitcoin when it kind of was unveiled. It had really enabled a lot of participants to suddenly trust each other in a trustless environment like the internet, right? And collaborate without the need for a centralized entity. It allows kind of the flow, but to do that, you had to have some integrity, so unmutable kind of transactions and transparency. So there's complete visibility to create that trust. Now, what is happening now is that if you think about it, this kind of cuts both ways, because if you have complete transparency, the public is exposed to all your data, all your metadata, everything. So I don't know if people are ready to have their bank account and all their transactions made public. I don't know if I want to have my health records, right, be exposed to everyone. I know it's not allowed by HIPAA, and there are other GDPR kind of requirements on other types of data. I don't know if I want to have my entire web browser history be made public for the world, right? And even if we can protect that data with some encryption, the public nature of blockchains means that the metadata is public. We at Midnight believe that both data and metadata should be protected and allow users to have a selective disclosure. For real world use cases, blockchains have to know to keep a secret.
An important point there, not just the data that you see, but the data about the data. And we'll get it more into metadata as we go along, I'm sure. You've mentioned before that Midnight improves on the capabilities and the way that previous generations of blockchain technology operate. How does this evolution address the limitations of previous blockchains? What's Midnight doing differently now that previous blockchains couldn't do before?
I think it's upon every generation to try and improve kind of those that came before them. At Midnight, we try to learn from all the successes and all the challenges that other blockchains have faced. And we kind of asked ourselves, why hasn't this industry kind of really crossed the chasm and become mainstream household, like, let's say, I don't know, web or cloud infrastructure? And we went to the market and asked, what are the frictions? What are the challenges? And we came up with kind of 5 main stories. The first one we already tackled. This is the issue of data protection. I don't know of any user or business that wants to expose all their data for the world to see. Actually, sometimes, as I mentioned, it's required by law to protect it. The second thing is performance. And I don't mean speed. I see a lot of blockchains all competing, who has the fastest, who has more transactions per second. But that's like, for me, like having 2 trains competing on who has the fastest train. The problem is different. When you have a lot of infrastructure out there, it's not the availability of the servers that is the issue, is your ability to get your transaction through, the equivalent of getting a seat on the train. So what we really need is for a business SLA is to be able to guarantee that our transaction will be processed and not be excluded, essentially having a denial of service, right? Solve that issue, and then you can worry about who has the faster train. So SLA guaranteed. That was the second thing. The third thing was around cost. Most blockchains are operated by a token. That token has price volatility, and the result is that blockchain, kind of the use of blockchain, is not predictable in terms of price or budget. Businesses need to plan ahead. They need to agree on how much it's going to cost to run an application next year. If you can't offer them that predictability, they're not going to use or build an application on your infrastructure. The fourth area was around viability. We see a lot of development in the landscape of regulatory. I think businesses will be hesitant to build on a technology that has a going concern that could not have viability to exist in the next 10 years. And last but not least is the builders themselves. They're looking at this new technology. They want something that is easy to build, easy to integrate. They're looking at all these novel new programming languages like Solidity and even Rust and Haskell and some of the other stuff. And they have a lot of benefits, but they have a very small talent pool. And so for large scale adoption, businesses are looking for a technology that people within their organizations already know how to work with and that are easily integratable with existing systems. So you want to have something that is already widespread.
And so that was the feedback from the market, some relatively clear requirements. What did that mean in terms of turning those into features for Midnight?
So as I mentioned, we tried to learn from everybody that came before us and address these market gaps. So Midnight builds from the ground up. We're not based on anybody else's technology. From the scratch, we build from the ground up something that protects both data and metadata. So you have that, and you have kind of selective disclosure when and how appropriate. We offer SLA. So our tokenomics are designed that you can guarantee access to the resources and the network when you need it. You also have price predictability. So you can buy capacity in advance or buy it a la carte, or, operators can really plan and optimize their costs, similar to how you buy, reserve capacity of compute instances on the cloud. We also try to help our operators and our customers meet regulatory requirements. The design was really putting in place capabilities that help them create the disclosure when it's needed by regulatory requirements, and discourage any bad behavior like anti-money laundering or anything else. So really help them be compliant, help them be successful. And finally, with respect to languages, we chose TypeScript, JavaScript, which is the most, I think, widely used programming language, as the foundation for the syntax of our smart contract and APIs, making Midnight the most easily accessible, integratable kind of technology to work with.
That's a really helpful introduction, Eran, and already some really useful insights about how Midnight's been constructed. I think what we can observe is that the way applications are built today, pre-Web3, make it hard for data owners and third parties to manage sensitive data. So we've already set ourselves off to a difficult start. Maybe could you help us illustrate with an example or maybe a visual why that's the case, and for those people who want to know more?
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here with a little visual. And what you can see, this is how the web kind of operates today, or used to be, right? You've got the client, the user kind of sending the data to an application on the server side, on the right-hand side. And in this kind of setup, the user forfeits any ownership over their private data. The company on their side promises not to misbehave, but really there's no way to stop it. It's completely centralized. The company controls everything and anything. And not only that, you just created a honeypot for hackers where all the sensitive data, passport information, passwords, DNA, whatever it is all held up in one big, and that also creates a challenge for the company because they now have security, compliance, legal risks and costs because now they really are kind of safeguarding a very sensitive kind of data set.
We're going to date the podcast by saying this, but as we were recording this, there was another hack announced where allegedly Ticketmaster, one of the largest ticketing websites in the entire world, has potentially had a breach of 570 million customer records, which I think illustrates the challenge of the bigger you get, the more significant the data, the more attractive it is to hackers, and the cost of remediating that particular challenge, not going to be small.
And so kind of the other option is to go to a decentralized architecture using blockchain where you get to own your own data. And you, I mean, the user could be an individual, a customer, a business, et cetera, right? So now with the decentralized architecture, you've got some advantages and disadvantages like any other case. The pro is that the company no longer owns the data. The user can revoke access, change the data, et cetera. The flip side is the company still has some access to the data and can misuse it, but something kind of a side effect that we didn't expect is that we've just exposed the metadata. Before, the metadata was hidden behind the curtain and just kind of the company operated it and kept that confidential. Now the metadata moved out into the open, got exposed, and everybody can see the transactions that we're doing, all of our activities. So, oh boy, that was not the intention that we wanted to do. So we got to evolve this one more time and go to how you should data protect your application. And what we did is we did a couple of changes. First, we moved the sensitive data from the blockchain to the wallet. So now that you're not really sharing your data or exposing your data to the blockchain, it stays with the user. It's fully trusted, fully protected. It doesn't leave it. But how do you get utility? I mean, if you hold the data and you keep it safe. So we're using zero knowledge proofs to essentially allow queries to ask questions about the data and send attestations to the network about what needs to be kind of shared or done. This way, you have really selective disclosure and selective information kind of coming across. And the last thing we did is we shielded the metadata. So we kept it on the blockchain, but protected it so people can't see the activity. So what you're getting is kind of the best of both worlds, right? You got a decentralized system that protects the data, but you do not compromise on the utility.
Got you. And you just mentioned the term zero knowledge proof there as a means for protecting the data. For those not familiar with the technology, could you help us just understand a little bit how zero knowledge proofs work?
Sure. So the essence of zero knowledge proof is that it enables one party to prove a certain statement without sharing the kind of the underlying or supporting data. An example would be, let's say I go to a bar and I want to prove that I'm old enough to drink without, showing my driver's license with all the information, sharing my complete birthday and maybe address or other things, right? It could be that I go to a voting booth, right? There's upcoming elections. I want to prove that I'm eligible to vote at that location without proving any information about, who I am or where do I live or any of that kind of stuff. I want to go to, I don't know, a web service, and I want to kind of prove that I can access it, but not share any other details about my identity. They don't even need to know on, and so on. So it's a technology that through cryptography allows you to share certain dimensions about the information without disclosing the underlying data. I know it sounds like, so how exactly do you tell me something without the information? How could I trust you? So let's take a real world example. Anthony, you and I are going to play a game where I have a safe. It's a massive safe, and it's holds all of my secret, or I don't know, it holds some really important stuff. And I know the code to the safe. It's a very long number. And you, Anthony, say, I also know the code to the safe. And I tell you, prove it to me without saying anything about the code to the safe. Now, normally you would say, okay, I got a problem. How do I tell you something without telling you something? Well, in this case, I'm going to take a piece of paper. I'm going to write a sentence on it. Anthony is a wonderful person. And I am going to put it in the safe. And I'm going to say to you, Anthony, please read out to me the sentence that I wrote. If you're able to do that, you have just demonstrated to me that you know the code to the safe without sharing any information because you just read the sentence, which has nothing to do with the code to the safe. This is just a real world kind of example, but that's the concept. I can demonstrate with complete trust that I know something or that certain data is true without giving any information about the underlying data.
Got it. I like that. And building on that, so let's go beyond me trying to get my annual performance review from the safe that you've so kindly left it in, and thank you for the kind feedback. Let's bring an even more specific example. We talk often about KYC records and know your customer credentials as processes that have significant potential for being transformed through zero knowledge, and it's somewhere that Midnight, and I know the community is already looking. Eran, could you take us through the challenges with KYC today and how Midnight may be able to improve on the way that KYC is orchestrated compared to traditional methods?
So you already kind of heard me talk about the fact that I like movies, and I want to bring another example. There was a Netflix production called Inventing Anna that shares the story of a lady by the name of Anna Sorokin, who was a con artist that poses as a wealthy European heiress for the elite class of New York. With no collateral whatsoever, Anna was able, in reality, to get a loan of $160,000 from one bank and almost was successful securing a $20 million loan from another bank because she wanted to purchase a building in Manhattan. Now all that was possible because today's KYC processes are just a mess. And this is, by the way, true for KYC, which stands for Know Your Customer, KYB, Know Your Business, Know Your Supplier, all that kind of stuff. The processes cost millions. They take very long time. The experience for the other side is horrendous. There are billions of fines, and it's just getting worse with new regulatory rules from FATF, more complex deep fakes that maybe I'm not even talking to you now, Anthony, who knows? This is going to be a gigantic disaster. Now, the banks know this. They're not oblivious. They're trying to make improvement in data collection, but it's all kind of marginal improvements. What they're not doing is they never, ever share data. In fact, 63%, according to survey, do not share KYC data within the bank, between the different departments. If Bank A would have shared data with Bank B, the Anna Sorokin story would have never happened. We really need to change the game. The problem is the banks are unwilling to share the data because they want to, reveal their crown assets, right, or the jewels. Midnight can be a game changer here. So what it could do, it can enable banks to share KYC affirmations without disclosing the underlying KYC data. For banks that need KYC affirmations, this could save millions, shorten the process, better experience. It's just fantastic. And for banks that have KYC data, it could transform a cost center into a revenue center. It could really change the game.
That's really interesting. And clearly it's not simple. It's not something just by adding additional parties to applications. There's actually a re-architecting required there. But the upside, the potential change to the fraud risk, to maybe administrative costs, and like you said, turning a cost center into a profit center could well be worth the business case and be worth exploring. Let's go even further. Beyond KYC, are there any other use cases you've envisaged for Midnight or that you've seen the community start building in particular industries that have those same stringent data protection or regulatory requirements?
Sure. We actually opened our DevNet back in November 2023 and expected just a kind of a drizzle of people, but we're overwhelmed with an avalanche from the community of use cases. We've since then seen people build just experiments on Midnight around DeFi, gaming, voting, auctions, educational stuff, social networks. It's just amazing. And even stuff more forward-looking like pharma research, supply chain management in marketplaces, ESG carbon tracking without disclosing assets or processes. It's amazing. But I think the one story that I'd like to share with you and the listeners is that I find just fascinating is kind of the concept of AI and what we can do for AI. And that's obviously a hot topic. I've seen some research from a company called Epoch AI. They are claiming, based on their analysis, that large language models that are training kind of the AI are going to run out of public data in the upcoming months, actually. And you immediately realize that what's going to be the next frontier, that AI is going to look to start training itself on private data. But how do you do that without violating privacy or, in some cases, the law? Well, similar to the KYC case that we've gave the example, Midnight can help store sensitive data and allow for a secure and kind of ethical way for AI to sample through zero knowledge that data without exposing the underlying data to the AI. We could really enhance AI engines and elevate their learning. I think that, we keep on coming back to the original kind of blockchain trilemma, right? The trade-off between security, scalability, decentralization. You always needed to kind of figure out which one you're going to satisfy. We believe future blockchains are going to have a new trilemma to struggle with. It's going to be the trade-off between data protection, ownership, and utility. Because you can get fantastic data utility if you expose all your data, like you would do maybe on some of the existing blockchains today, right? You've got no protection. Or you can have fantastic utility if you hand over your data, like we saw in the charts before, where you give your data to an enterprise and hope that they protect it, but you have no ownership. But how do you get the utility while keeping ownership and data protection? So we kind of believe that utility should not come at the expense of privacy and ownership. Our architecture allows you to keep data kind of with your control, with your ownership in a decentralized, so it's much more secure than a single honeypot. It's in the user's wallets, distributed, and you're using zero knowledge proofs built into the blockchain technology of Midnight to get the utility you need, thereby addressing this new dilemma or trilemma.
Some really interesting examples and a new trilemma for people. As if the existing blockchain trilemma wasn't complicated enough, we now have another one to consider, but certainly one that is non-trivial. What are some of the strategies you're looking at to ensure other organizations can get access, trust, and make use of the technology?
Good question. I think we're thinking in a few angles and really thinking about the players in our ecosystem. So first, you really want to be at the service of developers and operators. Make Midnight as simple as possible to be used, integrated, simple language, easy tooling, good documentation, all the things that developers need. Make their experience magical. I'm reminded about a comment that somebody once told me, wonders I can do, miracles take time. We're getting there. We're driving towards that fantastic experience. But ultimately, I want this to be like a simple web API that people can just access. And if you don't care about blockchain or coins or tokens or crypto, you can just access this API paid with fiat, as simple as you do. If you care to be more under the hood, you could do that as well. So really think about kind of the developers. Second thing is you got to think about the greater ecosystem needs. We talked about all the gaps. Removing these gaps removes the friction for adoption, helps people get going. And finally, I would say, don't take a kind of a solitary approach. Collaborate with other ecosystems. I wish the blockchain industry was more collaborative. We want to build capabilities, incentive programs, and partnerships that promote hybrid use cases, hybrid dApps. If you complement and enhance others rather than try to displace them, you create a win-win scenario.
And Eran, as we wrap up this conversation, thanks, Eran. And as we wrap up this discussion, if there was one piece of advice you could give to entrepreneurs or potential developers looking at Midnight Technologies today, what would it be?
I'd say there's no one ring to rule them all. There's no best blockchain. Every challenge has its appropriate tool. I believe Midnight is amazing, but it's not right for everything. For example, we're probably not going to be the fastest chain that is best fit for credit card processing, but equally, we protect financial data and great for other use cases. So I hope people will find Midnight usable, whether they use it as a layer 1 or layer 2 or not at all. Would cheer for you. I would advocate for you to use the right tool for the job and not try to displace or win one over another, just complement and help. At the same time, as much as I love the technology, I know that we should not fall in love with technology. We should fall in love with the customers, walk in their shoes, look at the bigger picture, how they, help them achieve their goals, partner with them and with the adopters to make Midnight the most useful tool in their arsenal. These guys are going to go change the world. They're going to create new use cases. I hope they choose Midnight, and I hope we can help them kind of achieve their goals and make them successful.
Thanks for that, Eran. That wraps up a fascinating discussion with the CEO of Midnight. We've gained incredible insights into the mission, technology, and future of this groundbreaking data protection blockchain. Eran, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your expertise. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for all the latest updates and more exciting conversations in the world of blockchain and data protection. And until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the potential of technology to transform our world. Unshielded is brought to you by Midnight. To find out more about how the Midnight Network is helping everyone to build a more equitable and accessible internet, visit our website at midnight.network. And remember to search Unshielded on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.